Two sisters gather aluminum cans to trade for a few pennies and help their sick mother. After reading a report about them, a billionaire decides to visit the neighborhood and is shocked to discover that this woman is, in fact, his own mother. The crystal clock showed 3 in the morning when Samuel Andrews finally closed his laptop. The figures from the latest contract he'd signed spun in his mind like a movie on loop. 60 million, an amount that, 5 years ago, would have made him jump for joy in the 5,000-square-foot penthouse he inhabited. Today, it was just another number in his bank account. The view from the panoramic window revealed the city lights, a man-made constellation that never slept. Samuel picked up a 30-year-old whiskey, poured 2 fingers into a crystal glass, and walked barefoot across the marble floor to the balcony. The cold early morning wind touched his face, but he barely felt it. It had been a long time since he'd truly felt anything. "Mr. Andrews, do you need anything else before I retire?" The butler's voice came from behind him, always formal, always punctual. "No, James. You can go to bed." The butler gave a slight bow and withdrew in silence. Samuel took a sip of his drink, letting the liquid burn his throat. It was the only genuine sensation he'd had all day. At 25 years, Samuel Andrews possessed an estimated fortune of nearly $2 billion. Fortune Chest, Forbes, Bloomberg, his name and face were on them all. The tech prodigy who revolutionized the financial market with an app created in his college dorm room. The success story everyone wanted to tell, repeat, emulate, and no one seemed to notice the obvious. He smiled in photos as if fulfilling an obligation. Samuel wandered through the apartment. In every room, expensive and rare objects he collected without real passion. An original Picasso on the living room wall, bought at an auction simply because he could. A Rodin sculpture in the foyer, acquired on a trip to Paris. Exotic cars in the garage that he seldom drove. Designer clothes chosen by his assistants. Everything perfectly organized. Everything utterly empty. His phone buzzed, a message from Vanessa, the model he had gone out with 3 times in the past few weeks. "Still awake? Handsome? I miss you." Samuel looked at the screen for a few seconds and then put the phone aside without replying. Tomorrow he would make up an excuse. He always did. On the next day's schedule, breakfast with investors at 7, board meeting at 9, lunch with the mayor at noon, an interview with CNN at 3, a charity cocktail at 8. People who wanted his money, his influence, his image. No one who truly wanted his company. Samuel sat on the Italian leather sofa and turned on the television just to break the silence of the apartment. He flipped through channels without really watching anything. News of war, reality shows, commercials for things he would never need to buy. His eyes fell on the coffee table, where a stack of magazines his secretary had set aside waited. The latest edition of Time was on top, with his photo on the cover and the headline, "The Loneliest Billionaire, How Samuel Andrews is Changing the Rules of the Game." Lonely. At least the magazine got that right. Samuel picked up another publication from the pile. A local variety magazine he normally wouldn't read. He flipped through the pages absent-mindedly, passing by smiling celebrities, gourmet recipes, fashion tips. In the inspirational stories section, a small photo caught his attention. 2 identical girls, dark curly hair, toothless grins, holding bags full of crushed cans. The title read, "5-year-old twins collect cans to pay for their mother's treatment." Something in that image made Samuel pause. Maybe it was the absurd contrast between his life and those children's lives. Maybe it was just curiosity. He started reading. Emma and Lily wake up every day at 5:30 a.m. to help their mother, Clara Wilson, before heading to school. At 5 years old, the twins already know the weight of responsibility. 8 months ago, Clara was diagnosed with a lung disease that prevents her from working regularly as a house cleaner. Without adequate health insurance, the family found a creative solution, collecting cans for recycling. "They say they're my little heroes," says Clara between coughs, in the small house she shares with her daughters in the Oakwood neighborhood. It was their idea. They saw on TV that cans are worth money and decided to help. Oakwood. The name of the neighborhood hit Samuel like a punch to the gut. Suddenly, the air felt thin in his lungs. Oakwood. The place where he grew up, the place he had left 10 years ago, vowing never to return. Samuel jumped up, his heart pounding in his chest. His hands trembled as he turned the page to keep reading. The twins walked through Oakwood streets every day after school, often until nightfall. The neighborhood, known for its high crime rates and poverty, has come together to help. "Everyone saves cans for the girls now," explains Margaret, owner of the local grocery store. "Seeing those kids working so hard affects us all." Crime and poverty. That's how they described the place he had lived in for 15 years of his life, and it was true. Oakwood apparently hadn't changed. Samuel kept reading, unable to stop now. So far, Emma and Lily have collected almost $600 in 6 months, which helped pay for doctor visits and some medications. "It's not enough for the full treatment, but it's what we have," says Clara. The 28-year-old single mother faces the possibility of losing the home they live in as she can no longer afford the rent. Samuel let the magazine fall to the floor. Images of his childhood flooded his mind like flashbacks of a movie. The narrow street where he played, the public school with broken windows, the rusty playground where he spent his afternoons, the small 2-bedroom apartment he and his mother shared. His mother, 10 years without seeing her, 10 years without a word. 10 years building an empire while cutting off every link to his past. Samuel walked to the window, pressing his fingers to his temples. A headache was starting to form. He hadn't thought about Oakwood for so long that now the memories felt like they belonged to someone else. A skinny, determined boy who promised his mother he would one day take them both away from that life. And then, when he finally got the chance, a full scholarship to an elite university, he left alone. He convinced himself he would go back for her once he found success. But success came faster than he imagined, along with a new life, new friends, new values. And the calls home became fewer until they stopped altogether. The last contact had been an argument. Harsh words, accusations hurt on both sides. Samuel offered money she refused, saying she didn't need handouts, that what she wanted was a son who was present, young and arrogant. He told her she didn't understand his world, that she was stuck in the past, that he needed to move on. He hung up, vowing never to call again, and he kept that promise for 10 years. "What am I doing?" he murmured to himself, resting his forehead against the cold glass of the window. Outside, the city sparkled, indifferent to his inner turmoil. He downed the rest of his whiskey in one gulp and placed the glass on the table. He picked up the magazine again, looking at the 2 smiling girls. They were the same age he'd been when his mother started working 2 jobs to support them. He could see himself in those hopeful eyes. Something broke inside him. A dam he'd kept sealed for years, holding back feelings he refused to face. Guilt, shame, longing. Without stopping to think, Samuel grabbed his phone and typed a message to his assistant. "Cancel all my appointments for the next 2 days. Urgent, personal matter." It was 4 in the morning when Samuel, wearing jeans and a t-shirt for the first time in months, grabbed the keys to one of his less conspicuous cars and left the luxury building. The security guard at the front desk gave him a strange look, not immediately recognizing the always impeccable Mr. Andrews in that unshaven man with a determined gaze. Dawn found Samuel driving through streets he hadn't visited in a decade. Oakwood felt both familiar and strange, like a dream you can't fully recall. Small houses close together, some with faded wooden porches, others with tiny but well-kept yards. Old trees lined the narrow roads, their roots cracking and lifting the pavement in places. Samuel drove slowly, taking in every detail. The corner convenience store, now with a different sign but in the same spot. The laundromat where his mother had worked for years, apparently still open. The gas station where he bought his first soda by himself. The elementary school appeared on his right, a brick building with a small fenced yard. He remembered himself sitting on the steps at the entrance, waiting for his mother, who was always late, exhausted after endless hours of work. She never complained. She always smiled when she saw him, no matter how tired she was. He parked the car and continued on foot. His legs seemed to remember the way, turning down the right streets automatically. The sensation was surreal, as if time had both stopped and advanced. The same smell of home cooking wafting through windows, the same loud conversations between neighbors, the same sound of children running around before school. But there were changes too. Shuttered shops, abandoned houses, signs of deterioration that hadn't existed in his memories. Oakwood seemed poorer, more forgotten. A group of teenagers passed him, backpacks on their shoulders, eyeing the well-dressed stranger who looked out of place in those streets. Samuel felt the weight of his transformation. He no longer belonged there, but neither did he feel part of the luxury world he had built. He turned a corner and his heart rate quickened. There was the street where he'd grown up. Wellington Street, number 43. The small two-bedroom house with a wooden porch and a tree in the yard. He stopped a few feet away, unable to go closer. The house looked smaller than he remembered. The faded blue paint, the white fence turned grey with age. The old tree where he had built a makeshift tree house was still there, taller and sturdier. As he watched, the front door opened. A small girl stepped out, holding a plastic bag. She carefully descended the porch steps, looking around. Her dark, curly hair bounced as she turned to call someone from inside the house. Seconds later, an identical girl appeared. Samuel held his breath. The twins from the magazine article. They were living in the house where he had grown up. The girls headed for the sidewalk, each carrying a bag, apparently starting their daily can collection. They looked so small, so fragile to be bearing that burden. Samuel felt a lump in his throat. Without thinking, he took a step forward, just as one of the girls noticed him. "Hi, mister," she called, waving with her free hand. "Do you have cans for us?" Samuel froze, not knowing what to say. The other girl looked over as well, more shy, partly hiding behind her sister. No, sorry," he finally managed, his voice almost a whisper. The more talkative girl shrugged. "That's okay. If you find any, save them for us, okay? We live here," she pointed to the house. "It's to help our mom." "She's sick," added the quieter sister, her voice barely audible. Samuel stepped a little closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. "You're Emma and Lily, right? I read about you in a magazine." The girl's eyes went wide. "We were in a magazine?" asked the talkative one, whom Samuel guessed was Emma. "Mom didn't say anything." "She probably doesn't know," Samuel answered, crouching to their level. "You two are doing a great job helping her." "It's because she coughs a lot," Lily explained, her initial reserve fading, "and she can't work every day." "But she's the best mom in the world," Emma added firmly. "She just needs expensive medicine." Samuel's heart tightened. He reached into his pocket, feeling the wallet full of money. He could solve all of that family's problems with a single check, an amount that would be insignificant to him. "Your cans. Can I see how many you've collected so far?" he asked, looking for a way to help without offending. The girls opened their bags, showing a few dozen crushed cans. "It's not many yet because we just started today," Emma explained. "By the end of the week, we have more." Samuel was about to offer help when the front door opened again. A woman appeared, dressed simply, a worried expression on her pale face. "Girls, who are you talking to? I've told you not to." Her voice trailed off when she saw Samuel. Time seemed to freeze. The air between them grew thick with tense electricity. It wasn't his mother. This wasn't the house he once knew. The woman leaned against the doorframe, as if she needed support just to stand. Her hands were visibly shaking. "Samuel?" she whispered, his name escaping her lips like a reluctant prayer. Then memory hit him like a train. Clara. Clara Wilson, the girl who lived 2 houses down from him. About 5 years older, she used to babysit him sometimes when his mother had to work extra shifts. "Clara," he responded, almost voiceless. "I read about your daughters." The twins looked from their mom to the stranger, puzzled by the sudden tension. "You guys know each other?" Emma asked. Clara took a deep breath, visibly trying to collect herself. "Go inside, girls, now." "But Mom, we need to go get cans," Emma protested. "Now, Emma," Clara repeated, her voice allowing no argument. The girls obeyed reluctantly, casting curious glances at Samuel as they climbed the porch steps. "Why are you here?" Clara asked as soon as the daughters were inside, her voice low but sharp. Samuel took a step closer. "I saw the article and—" He hesitated. What could he say? That he felt an inexplicable urge to return to a past he'd abandoned. That guilt was eating him from the inside out. "I wanted to help." Clara let out a bitter laugh. "Help? After 10 years, you show up out of nowhere wanting to help. Clara, I can pay for your treatment for anything you need, he offered in rushed words. I know it must be hard with the girls and... No, she interrupted, the word landing between them like a stone. I don't want your money, Samuel. But the girls, they're collecting cans to... That's none of your business. Clara cut him off again, but a cough seized her. She doubled over slightly, covering her mouth. Instinctively, Samuel took a step toward her, but Clara lifted a hand to stop him. I'm fine, she said once the coughing subsided, though the pallor of her face told a different story. You've done enough. What do you mean? Samuel asked, genuinely confused. Clara wiped the corner of her eyes, too tired to keep hiding her pain. Your mother, Samuel, she waited for you until the very last moment. The ground seemed to open beneath his feet. What are you talking about? You never knew, did you? Clara shook her head in disbelief. Of course not. You never called, never visited. She took a deep breath, a decisive look crossing her face. She died 5 years ago, Samuel. Cancer. It was quick, thank God. She didn't suffer much. Samuel's world collapsed. His mother, dead. For 5 years he had lived, thrived, accumulated wealth, while she... Why? His voice broke. Why didn't anyone tell me? And how would we? Clara asked, anger barely contained. You changed your number, changed your address. You vanished. She tried to find you when she was diagnosed. She even hired a private detective, you know? Spent what little she had trying to track you down. Each word was a stab to Samuel's chest. His vision blurred with tears he refused to shed. This can't be, he murmured, more to himself than to Clara. This was her house, Clara continued mercilessly. When she died, she left it to me. We were friends, you know. I stayed with her until the end. Someone had to... Samuel staggered backward, leaning on the small fence. His mind refused to process what he was hearing. His mother, gone, while he was too busy closing million-dollar deals to even attempt reconciliation. I need to see, he murmured. Where is she? St. Joseph Cemetery, Clara replied, her voice softening slightly at the sight of Samuel's genuine anguish. East section, 3rd row. A heavy silence fell between them. Inside the house, the muted voices of the twins could be heard. Your daughters, Samuel finally said, trying to pull himself together. Please let me help them. Not for you, not for me, for them. Clara studied him for a long moment, as if trying to see through him. Go see your mother first, Samuel, then we'll talk. With that, she turned and entered the house, shutting the door softly behind her. Samuel stood there for several minutes, unable to move. The world around him seemed to lose color, sound, substance. The only real thing was the pain growing in his chest, a physical, tangible agony that felt like it would split him in two. When he finally managed to move, he felt like an automaton. He returned to his car, started the engine, and drove aimlessly for hours, memories of his mother flooding his mind, her tired smile after a long day's work, her hands, rough from labor but gentle when tending to him in sickness, the proud look on her face when he brought home his first report card of straight A's. The last memory was the worst, her hurt voice on the phone, begging him not to sever the only bond they had left, and he, arrogant, cut it off anyway. By the time the sun began to set, Samuel was parked outside St. Joseph Cemetery. The place was simple, well kept, old trees offering shade to visitors. He walked among the graves, following Clara's directions, east section, 3rd row, and there it was. A simple, almost modest headstone. Maria Helena Andrews, beloved mother and friend, 1968, 2020. Your love remains. Samuel dropped to his knees before the grave, tears finally breaking free. Violent sobs shook his body as reality crushed him. His mother had died alone while he celebrated the success he had once sworn to share with her. Forgive me, he whispered between sobs. Please, forgive me. But the forgiveness he sought would not come from the cold stone in front of him. He would have to find it elsewhere, perhaps by helping the girls who now lived in the house that had once been his. perhaps by trying to ease the suffering of Clara, who had done what he should have done, stayed by his mother's side. When night finally fell, Samuel got up, physically and emotionally exhausted, yet a new determination burned in his chest. He couldn't change the past, but the future was still in his hands. He drove back to his luxurious, empty apartment, which now felt even more vacant or even more meaningless. Passing through Oakwood, he slowed down as he neared Clara's house. The lights were on, and for a brief moment, he could see the silhouettes of the twins running inside the living room. Tomorrow, he would return. No matter how long it took, he would make Clara accept his help, not as charity, but as a form of redemption. A chance to honor his mother's memory by doing what she would have done, caring for those in need. On the city skyline, the lights shone indifferent to his pain, guilt, and resolution. But for the first time in years, Samuel felt something beyond emptiness. It was pain, yes, intense and devastating. But it was also purpose, a reason to exist beyond accumulating wealth. The loneliest billionaire in the city had just found something his money couldn't buy, the chance to do the right thing, even if it was too late. 3 days later, Samuel parked the car 2 blocks from Clara's house. He had chosen an old Toyota borrowed from one of the building's maintenance staff. No Mercedes or Porsche this time. He wore jeans, a simple grey t-shirt and sneakers. No expensive watch, no designer sunglasses. Just a regular man trying to blend into Oakwood streets. In his right hand, he carried a toolbox. In his left, a shopping bag from the local market. The toolbox felt heavier than he expected. It had been so long since he'd used tools that his hands seemed unaccustomed to the weight. The Saturday morning sun warmed the streets. Children played on the sidewalks. Neighbors washed their cars. A dog chased a ball in a small park at the corner. The normalcy of this place struck him like a revelation. Life went on here, simple and real, while he hid in his tower of glass and steel. He approached the house slowly, careful not to be noticed. From the street, he could see the activity through the kitchen window. Clara was there, stirring something on the stove, her hair tied in a messy bun, her posture slightly hunched. Even from a distance, he could see her fatigue. The twins ran around the small side yard, tossing a faded ball back and forth. Their laughter rang out like tiny bells in the morning air. For a moment, Samuel just watched, trying to lock that everyday scene into his memory. A family struggling to survive, yet still a family. He took a deep breath and crossed the street. Emma spotted him first, her face lighting up with recognition. "It's the can man!" she shouted, dropping the ball and running toward him. Lily, more cautious, followed with hesitant steps. "Hi," Samuel said, attempting a natural smile. "Remember me?" "Of course," Emma said, her childlike confidence contrasting with her sister's shyness. "You know our mum. I knew her a long time ago. My name is Samuel. I'm Emma and this is Lily." The girl pointed to her sister, who was partially hiding behind her. "Did you bring presents?" she asked, eyeing the shopping bag and toolbox with curiosity. The sound of footsteps interrupted them. Clara appeared at the side door, drying her hands on a dish towel. Her face hardened when she saw Samuel. "Girls, go inside," she ordered. "But Mom, we're playing," Emma protested. "Now." The tone left no room for discussion. The girls obeyed, Lily casting one last curious look at Samuel before disappearing into the house. Clara remained in the doorway, lifting her chin in a gesture of defiance. "What do you want this time?" Samuel swallowed hard. The mental rehearsal he'd done all morning now felt inadequate. "I noticed your front door was giving you trouble." He lifted the toolbox as evidence. "Thought I could fix it." Clara crossed her arms. "I don't need charity." "It's not charity," Samuel insisted, keeping his voice calm. "It's an attempt to help." "Why?" The question, simple and direct, caught him off guard. Why was he there? Guilt. Remorse. A desperate attempt to fix the unfixable. "Because I want to do the right thing," he finally answered. "Even if it's late." Clara studied him for a long moment, as if assessing the sincerity of his words. Finally, her shoulders sagged slightly. "Do whatever you want with the door," she said, turning to go back inside. "Don't expect any thanks." Samuel nodded, though she could no longer see him. He set the shopping bag on the porch steps and went to the front door. The hinge was loose, and the wood around it was rotted. It wasn't a simple job. He opened the toolbox and checked what he had. In the last 10 years, his hands had touched only keyboards, documents, and crystal glasses. Now they held screwdrivers and hammers with a forgotten familiarity. As he worked, he discreetly observed life inside the house. Through the side window, he saw Clara stirring what appeared to be lunch, a simple stew, judging by the occasional aroma drifting his way. The twins sat at the kitchen table, coloring in used school notebooks, a modest life but as orderly as circumstances allowed. He also noticed the problems: the roof with a few missing shingles, peeling paint, a cracked window in the back bedroom, the kitchen faucet that dripped incessantly, producing a rhythmic sound that would drive anyone crazy at night. He worked for nearly 2 hours on the door. When he finished, it opened and closed smoothly without the previous squeak. Satisfied, he packed up his tools and grabbed the shopping bag from the porch. He took a deep breath before knocking on the side door. Emma answered, her face lighting up again. "You fixed the door." "Mom, he fixed it." Clara appeared, drying her hands on a worn apron. Her gaze went from the now functioning door back to Samuel. "Thank you," she said simply, the words leaving her mouth with difficulty. "I brought a few things," Samuel said, offering the bag, trying to sound casual. "Just some basic groceries." Clara's eyes hardened again. "I told you I—" "Please," he interrupted. I'm not trying to buy anything. I just want to help somehow." Her gaze faltered for a moment. "Can we keep the food, Mom?" Emma asked, peeking into the bag. "There's cereal." Clara sighed, a weary sound that seemed to come from deep within her soul. "Put it in the kitchen." She finally relented. Emma took the bag eagerly and ran inside. Lily, watching timidly from the doorway, followed her sister with a small smile for Samuel. An uncomfortable silence fell between the adults. "How are things?" Samuel asked, attempting small talk. "We're getting by," Clara answered tersely, her tone making it clear she didn't want to elaborate. "If you ever need anything, I don't—" she cut in, then softened her tone slightly. "But thanks for the door." Clara was about to close the door when a coughing fit overtook her. She doubled over, covering her mouth with her apron. The cough was deep, painful to hear. "Are you okay?" Samuel took a worried step toward her. Clara lifted her hand, stopping him, as she recovered her breath. "I'm fine, it's just a stubborn cold." It didn't sound like a simple cold, but Samuel didn't insist. "I left my number on the fridge," he said, "for any emergency." Clara nodded briefly and closed the door, leaving him standing on the porch. "Sai si mutu saja." In the following weeks, Samuel established a routine. He came to the house 3 times a week, always with some practical excuse. He fixed the dripping faucet, replaced some shingles on the roof, repaired the cracked window. Small repairs beyond his knowledge, forcing him to watch YouTube tutorials the night before, but giving him a reason to be there. He always brought something: a small house repair, non-perishable groceries, a children's book hidden among his tools. Clara never asked, never openly thanked him, but she also no longer stopped him from coming. Over time, Samuel began to understand the rhythm of that family. Clara woke up at 5 in the morning to prepare a simple breakfast for the girls, taking them to school by 7. She came back to do small sewing jobs for a few dollars. She picked the girls up at noon, cooked lunch, and in the afternoon, when she found work, she cleaned houses in the neighboring, more affluent district. The twins stayed with an elderly neighbor who charged almost nothing to watch them. Clara's routine was exhausting, frequently interrupted by coughing spells that seemed worse each week. Samuel observed her discreetly, noticing how she leaned against walls to rest when she thought no one was looking, how her breathing became labored after climbing the few steps to the porch, how her face grew paler every day. There were tense moments. Clara refused to discuss her health. When Samuel suggested doctors or treatments he could pay for, she simply changed the subject or left the room. Her pride was like a concrete wall between them, impenetrable and unwavering. But with the girls, things were different. Emma, outgoing and inquisitive, soon adopted Samuel as a kind of uncle. She would pull him by the arm to show him her drawings, ask him to read stories, bombard him with endless questions. "Do you have a big house?" Emma asked one afternoon, while he was fixing a shelf in the living room. "Yes," Samuel replied, measuring a piece of wood. "Bigger than ours." "A bit bigger," he smiled. "Does it have a pool?" Samuel paused, looking at the girl. "Yes, it has a small pool on the rooftop." Emma's eyes widened. "On the rooftop? How can a pool be on the roof?" Samuel laughed and tried to explain the concept of a penthouse. Emma listened, fascinated, piling question upon question. Lily, quieter, sat nearby, absorbing every word with attentive eyes. "Can we swim there one day?" Emma finally asked. The question caught Samuel off guard. "Sure," he answered automatically, then realized what he'd just promised. "I mean, if your mum says it's okay." Emma made a face. "She always says no to the fun stuff. She just wants to protect you," Samuel defended, surprising even himself. "She works so hard to take care of you two." "I know," Emma said, suddenly serious. "It's because she's sick and can't work every day like she used to." Lily, who rarely spoke when Samuel was around, moved closer. "She cries at night," she said softly. Samuel felt his heart clench. "She cries?" Lily nodded. "When she thinks we're asleep, and she coughs a lot." "She hides her medicine too," Emma added. "She says they're vitamins, Kais, but we know they're not." Samuel set his tools aside and sat on the floor with the girls. "You two are really smart, you know that?" They smiled shyly. "Your mum's going to be okay. I'll try to help." "Promise?" Lily asked, her eyes shining with a hope that nearly broke Samuel. "Promise," he replied, knowing it was a promise he had to keep no matter what. Right then, Clara entered the living room, carrying a tray of juice. She found Samuel sitting on the floor with her daughters, and something passed between them. A silent acknowledgement that an invisible line had been crossed. "What are you all plotting?" she asked, trying to sound light, but the tension in her voice was evident. "Samuel promised we can swim in his pool one day," Emma blurted out, too excited to keep it in. Clara's face hardened. "Don't make plans without asking me," she said firmly. "Now go wash your hands for a snack." The girls left, leaving Samuel and Clara alone. He stood up, feeling the need to explain. "Sorry, I didn't mean, don't make promises you won't keep." Clara interrupted, her voice low and intense. "Not to them." "I'm not promising anything I don't intend to keep," Samuel countered, meeting her gaze. "I'm here, Clara. I won't disappear." She let out a humorless laugh. "Like you didn't disappear before. Like you didn't leave your mother waiting until her last breath." The word struck Samuel like a slap. A thick silence followed. "I'm trying to do what's right now," he finally said. "Why?" "To ease your conscience. To feel better about what you did." Clara set the tray down on the table more forcefully than necessary. "Maybe at first," Samuel admitted honestly. "But now I'm worried about you, about the girls. We don't need your worry." "Clara," he stepped toward her, "I see how you are. The hidden meds, the worsening cough, the fatigue. This is more than just a stubborn cold." Her face went even paler. "You don't know what you're talking about. Let me help," he pleaded, almost begging. "Not for the past. For the future. For the girls, for you." Before Clara could respond, another coughing spell took over. This time it was worse than the ones before. She bent forward, gripping the edge of the table, her knuckles white. When the coughing finally stopped, there were spots of blood on the handkerchief she used to cover her mouth. Samuel stared in horror at the handkerchief, then at Clara's pale face. She quickly hid the evidence but it was too late. "It's just a burst blood vessel," she explained defensively. "Nothing serious." "Clara, please," Samuel implored. "This is serious. You need—" "Don't tell me what I need," she interrupted, her voice weak, lacking its usual conviction. She leaned against the wall for a moment, visibly dizzy. Samuel instinctively moved closer to support her. This time, she didn't push him away, a fleeting moment of vulnerability that spoke volumes. "Promise me you'll see a doctor," he asked, his voice gentle but firm. "Not for me, for the girls. They need you." Clara swallowed hard, tears glistening in her eyes. For a moment, her wall of strength fell, and Samuel saw the real fear in her gaze. "I can't afford—" "I can," he interjected gently. "Not as charity, as a friend." Clara looked at him, years of pride and independence battling against the growing fear for her daughter's future. Finally, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. The emotional distance between them was still vast, but that small gesture of acceptance was the first real step, a fragile moment of trust that Samuel silently vowed not to break. In the hallway, hidden, the twins watched with serious, hopeful faces. To them, Samuel was more than a stranger now. He was a promise that things could get better. And to him, those two girls had become the chance to do something genuinely good in a life that, despite all its wealth, had been barren of real meaning. Samuel parked the car and glanced at the passenger seat. He had stopped by a toy store on the way, but after wandering the aisles for nearly an hour, left with only a simple jigsaw puzzle. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive. Just a 100-piece set with a picture of a sunny park, the kind of thing any average dad might buy for his kids. "I'm learning," he muttered to himself, walking toward Clara's house. Over the past 2 weeks, something in his approach had changed. After seeing the blood on the handkerchief, Samuel realized he needed Clara's trust before it was too late. Not with grand gestures or cash offers, but with something much harder for him: genuine time and presence. He had reorganized his entire professional schedule. For the first time in years, he wasn't available 24/7 for his company. He delegated meetings, postponed trips, refused dinners. His assistant looked at him like he'd been abducted by aliens and replaced with an imposter. Maybe he had been. "Sam! Sam!" Emma ran up to him as soon as she saw him approaching. She'd started calling him Sam 3 days ago, and that simple, familiar nickname stirred an odd emotion in his chest each time he heard it. "Hey there, kiddo," he replied, crouching to her level. "How was school today?" "I drew a picture and the teacher put it on the wall," Emma said excitedly. "And Lily got a gold star in math." Samuel smiled, noticing Lily approaching more slowly, in her usual shy way but with a small smile on her lips. "Is that true, Lily? A gold star in math?" The girl nodded, her cheeks flushing with pride. "I got all the problems right." "That's amazing," Samuel said, genuinely impressed. "You know, math is really important in what I do. Maybe you can help me with calculations one day." Lily's eyes shone with possibility. "What did you bring?" Emma asked, pointing at the package in his hands. "A jigsaw puzzle," he answered, handing it to them. "I thought we could put it together." The girls examined the box curiously. "We've never done a puzzle before," Lily admitted. The comment, uttered so naturally, hit Samuel hard. For these children, a simple 100-piece puzzle was a first-time experience. In his luxury apartment, he had an entire room full of things he'd never used, impulse buys forgotten the next day. "Well, then this will be the first of many," he promised, feeling a renewed sense of determination. "Where's your mum?" "Resting," Emma said, her smile briefly fading. "She said she's just taking a little break, but—" "She coughed a lot today," Lily finished, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Samuel nodded, worry gnawing at him. Clara still resisted the idea of seeing a specialist, accepting only basic checkups at the local clinic. The preliminary diagnosis mentioned pneumonia, but Samuel suspected something more serious. He tried not to dwell on the scariest possibility, that Clara might have the same kind of cancer that had taken his mother. "Let's go inside quietly then," he suggested, "and we can work on the puzzle at the kitchen table. Once she's up, she might have more energy to join us." The girls agreed, tiptoeing inside as if on a secret mission. Samuel smiled at the gesture, though the smile did not reach his eyes. With each passing day, it became more obvious Clara was deteriorating, not improving. In the kitchen, he prepared a simple snack for the twins, peanut butter and jelly sandwiches with the few items Clara had allowed him to bring on recent visits. Then he opened the puzzle on the table, explaining the strategy. "First, we separate the edge pieces. See, they have one straight side." The girls listened intently, their small fingers carefully moving the pieces. It was a simple game, but for them, a brand new experience, and the concentration on their faces was absolute. Samuel watched them, realizing how easy it was to make them happy. A $10 puzzle, a sandwich, 15 minutes of sincere attention, small things that built something huge. Over the past years, he'd forgotten how happiness could be found in such simple moments. "Sam, does this piece fit here?" Emma asked, snapping him out of his thoughts. "Almost," he said, helping her rotate the piece. "See how the color matches better like this." As they worked on the puzzle, they chatted about school, their friends, the silly shapes sometimes formed by clouds. Childish conversations, light and agenda-free, so different from the calculated negotiations that had dominated his usual days. Samuel didn't notice Clara standing in the kitchen doorway until Lily looked up and smiled. "Mom, we're doing a puzzle." Clara looked like she had just gotten out of bed, disheveled hair, dark circles under her eyes, a pillow mark on her cheek. Even so, there was an undeniable grace about her, a quiet strength, a dignity not even illness could overshadow. "I see," she replied, her voice hoarse. "Looks like fun." Samuel rose, pulling out a chair for her. "Want to join us? We're still working on the edges." For a moment, Clara seemed about to decline, as she usually did. But then, surprising them all, she sat down. "I can try a few pieces." The twins exchanged excited glances, and Samuel felt a small sense of victory. It was the first time Clara had agreed to participate in something he initiated. They worked on the puzzle for almost an hour. Clara said little, but her hands moved skillfully among the pieces, finding connections the others didn't see. Occasionally, she coughed into the handkerchief she always kept close, turning her face away to hide any concerning evidence. As the puzzle's image started to emerge, Emma clapped her hands in delight. "Look, you can see the lake now." "And here's the big tree," Lily said, fitting an important piece into place. Clara watched her daughters, and for a fleeting moment, Samuel saw a genuine smile on her lips, swift and barely perceptible, but real. It was like glimpsing the sun through thick clouds. "Time for your baths, girls," Clara announced when they finished the puzzle. "It's getting late." "But Sam hasn't told us a story," Emma protested. Clara gave Samuel a raised eyebrow look. "A story?" Samuel rubbed the back of his neck, slightly embarrassed. "Sometimes I tell them bedtime stories if I'm around at that time." "He does different voices for each character," Lily explained, her usually serious eyes now shining. "The witch's voice is the best one." "Really?" Clara asked, looking at Samuel with something new in her eyes, perhaps surprise, perhaps curiosity. "I'm not that good," he shrugged, "but I try. Please, Mom, let him tell a story tonight," Emma pleaded. Clara sighed, but it was a less tense sigh than usual. "All right. One story after your bath, then straight to bed." The girls cheered and ran to the bathroom, leaving the adults alone. Samuel stood there, feeling both nervous and expectant. Telling bedtime stories to the twins had become one of his favorite moments, a task for which he'd discovered a surprising knack. The girls' bedroom was small, with 2 single beds, faded but clean sheets, and walls decorated with their own drawings. There weren't many toys, just a few well-worn dolls, library books, and now the puzzle he'd brought, carefully assembled and placed on the dresser for display. Emma and Lily were already in their beds, hair damp from the bath, wearing matching pajamas, eyes shining with anticipation. "What story tonight?" Samuel asked, sitting on the chair between the beds. "The one about the princess who saves the dragon," Emma requested without hesitation. "Again?" He pretended to protest, but was already smiling. "It's the best," Lily insisted. "All right then. The princess and the dragon it is." Samuel cleared his throat dramatically, assuming a storyteller's posture. "Once upon a time, in a kingdom not so far away." As he told the tale, doing different voices for each character, and making broad gestures during the exciting parts, he noticed Clara standing at the door, watching. She did not enter, keeping a physical distance, but her eyes never left the scene. Something in her gaze, no longer the usual resentment, but a complicated mix of emotions, perhaps longing, definitely fear, and something else, something Samuel couldn't name. When the story reached its end, with the brave princess rescuing the misunderstood dragon and flying off to explore the world together, the twins applauded happily. Emma immediately asked for another story, but Clara intervened. "It's past bedtime. You have school tomorrow." There were the usual half-hearted protests, but they were indeed tired, their eyes already drooping with sleep. Samuel got up, tucking the blankets around them. "Good night, little ones," he said gently. "Good night, Sam," they replied in unison. Lily held his hand for a moment. "Are you coming tomorrow too?" The question was simple but laden with meaning. She wanted reassurance, confirmation she wouldn't be abandoned. Samuel felt a lump in his throat. "I'll come, yes," he promised, "and we'll get another puzzle once we finish this one." Satisfied with the answer, Lily let go of his hand and closed her eyes. Within seconds, her breathing slowed, settling into the rhythm of sleep. Samuel left the room, following Clara back to the living room. Outside, the sky was already dark, and he knew he should leave, but something kept him there, a conversation that needed to happen. "They like you a lot," Clara said at last, breaking the silence. "And I like them," he replied simply. "That scares me." The admission surprised him. It was the first time Clara had shared a true vulnerability with him. "Why?" he asked softly. She looked at the window, at the darkness outside. "Because people leave, Samuel. You left once." Her words hung heavily between them, laden with truth. "I'm not leaving this time," he promised. Clara finally looked at him, tears gathering in her eyes. "How can I believe that?" "You can't," Samuel admitted honestly. "You'll have to watch, day by day, until you realize I mean it." A coughing fit interrupted the moment. Clara bent over slightly, her body shaking with the effort. When she straightened, exhaustion was etched into every line of her face. "How you need help, Clara," Samuel said gently. "Not for me, not for you, for the twins." It was the same conversation they'd been having for weeks, but now something had changed. The wall Clara had erected between them showed cracks. "I'm afraid," she confessed so quietly he could barely hear. "I know," he replied, resisting the urge to touch her, to offer physical comfort he knew she would reject. "But you're not alone. Not anymore." Clara closed her eyes for a moment, as if absorbing his words, testing their weight and truth. "I'll think about seeing a specialist," she finally said. "No promises, but I'll think about it." For Samuel, that small consent was worth more than any million-dollar contract he'd ever signed. It was the first genuine step toward trust. When he left the house that night, he felt something new blooming inside him, not just the desire to help or fix past mistakes, but a deeper, more genuine feeling. These people, Clara, Emma, Lily, were becoming his family. A family he never knew he wanted, but now couldn't imagine living without. Driving back to his luxurious, empty apartment, Samuel finally understood that all his money, success and material possessions were worth less than Emma's laughter, Lily's shy smile, and the possibility, however slight, of one day earning Clara's forgiveness. The seed of change had been planted, not only in their dynamic but within himself, and Samuel was determined to see it bloom, no matter how long it took or how much effort it required. The doctor's office was pristine, with discreet paintings on the walls and a faint smell of disinfectant in the air. Samuel anxiously watched the closed door where Clara was being examined by Dr. Peterson, one of the top pulmonologists in the city. It had been a small victory to convince her to come. After weeks of gentle insistence, Clara finally agreed to undergo more comprehensive tests. The worsening symptoms and the worried looks on her daughter's faces were more persuasive than any words Samuel could offer. In the 2 hours he waited, Samuel checked his watch dozens of times, answered work emails without being able to concentrate, and flipped through outdated waiting room magazines without absorbing a single word. When the door finally opened, Clara emerged first, followed by the doctor. Her face was pale, lips pressed into a tight line. Samuel stood up immediately. "May we speak in private, Mr. Andrews?" asked Dr. Peterson. Clara shook her head. "He can hear it. I'll need help explaining things to the girls anyway." The doctor motioned for them to sit down, and all three did so. Clara kept her hands tightly clasped in her lap, her knuckles white. "The results are concerning," the doctor began, his tone professional yet kind. "We're looking at a case of pulmonary fibrosis in a moderate stage, possibly caused by prolonged exposure to cleaning chemicals without proper protection." Samuel felt a heaviness in his stomach. Pulmonary fibrosis, a disease without a cure. "What are the treatment options?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "We need to start medication immediately to slow the progression, respiratory therapy, possibly oxygen support as needed, and, of course, eliminating any exposure to lung irritants." "Which means I can't do house cleaning anymore," Clara concluded, her voice strangely calm. "Exactly. And we have to consider the possibility of a lung transplant in the future, depending on how things evolve." Samuel watched Clara's face close off as the doctor continued explaining the treatment plan, medications, follow-up visits. He saw the numbers add up in her mind, thousands of dollars in medical expenses, not to mention losing her primary source of income. "I'm going to prescribe these medications to start," the doctor finished, handing Clara a prescription. "And I'd like to see you again next week." When they left the office, silence hung between them. In the car, Clara stared out the window, lost in thought. "We'll figure this out," Samuel said at last, driving toward the nearest pharmacy. "Medications, treatment, everything." Clara didn't reply, still processing the diagnosis. "And about work," he continued, "you don't have to worry. I can help with the bills while you recover." She finally looked at him. "How?" Samuel hesitated only a second. "I have a savings account. I can transfer enough to cover your expenses for the next few months. Or years, if need be." "A savings account," Clara repeated, a faint tone of disbelief in her voice. "Yes, money isn't a problem, Clara. We can even look for a better house, in a neighborhood with cleaner air. The girls could have their own rooms, a yard to play in." He kept talking, growing enthusiastic as he described how he could make their lives easier. Comprehensive health insurance, a better school for the girls, maybe even someone to help around the house while Clara recovered. He was so caught up in his ideas that he failed to notice Clara's expression changing, hardening with each word. "Stop," she said quietly. Samuel didn't hear her, continuing with his plan. "Stop," Clara repeated, louder this time, her voice cutting through his words. "You still don't get it, do you?" Samuel looked at her, confused. "What are you talking about? I'm just trying to help." "No, you're trying to buy a solution," Clara said, anger rising in her voice, "just like you always have. Like you did with your mother." Samuel felt the sting of those words. "That's not fair." "Isn't it? Tell me, Samuel, what's changed? You still think throwing money at problems will make them disappear." "I'm not throwing money," he defended himself, his tone rising. "I'm offering a real solution to a real problem. You're sick, Clara. You can't work. The girls need to eat. The house needs repairs. These are facts, not issues of pride." He parked in front of the pharmacy, turning off the engine with more force than necessary. "What do you want in return?" Clara asked, her eyes burning with restrained anger. "My gratitude, my forgiveness, the right to feel better about abandoning your mother." "That's not what this is about." "It's exactly about that. You want redemption, but you want it the easy way, writing a check instead of truly understanding what you did wrong." Samuel took a deep breath, trying to calm down. "All I'm trying to do is help you and the girls. Then listen to what we need instead of deciding for us," Clara snapped, her composure finally breaking. "Don't you think I know I need money? That I don't stay up at night worrying about how I'll pay the bills now? But there are things more important than money, Samuel." "Like what?" he asked, exasperated. "Like pride. What good is pride when you can hardly breathe without coughing up blood?" The moment the words left his mouth, Samuel regretted them. Clara flinched as though he had slapped her. "I'll get your meds," he muttered, leaving the car before the argument got worse. Inside the pharmacy, while waiting for the prescription to be filled, Samuel tried to collect himself. He didn't understand why Clara reacted with such anger. He was just trying to help, offering real solutions. What was so wrong with that? When he returned to the car, Clara was discreetly wiping her eyes. She had been crying in his absence. Guilt flooded him at once. Clara, I'm sorry, Let's go home, she interrupted, her voice under control again. The girls are waiting. The rest of the drive passed in tense silence. When they arrived at Clara's house, Emma and Lily ran out to greet them. They had been under the elderly neighbor's supervision, who quietly withdrew after exchanging words with Clara. Mom, what did the doctor say? Emma asked, clinging to Clara's leg. Samuel watched Clara crouch down, with effort to hug her daughters. Mom has a problem with her lungs, she explained gently. I'll need to take medicine and rest more. Are you going to get better? Lily asked, her big eyes full of concern. Clara hesitated for just a moment. I'll get better, yes. But it will take time. The girls seemed to accept the explanation, though Samuel noticed the worried looks they exchanged. They were little but perceptive enough to sense something serious. Did Sam help us put another puzzle together? Clara asked, changing the subject. Emma shook her head. No, sir, because you said it was a surprise and we had to wait till you got back. Clara glanced at Samuel, confused. He cleared his throat awkwardly. Actually, I was thinking maybe we could look for a new house, a bigger place, with a yard, maybe even a pool. The girl's eyes went wide at the suggestion. A pool, Emma repeated, starstruck. Samuel, Clara warned, her tone indicating this was not the time. But Samuel, still wounded from their earlier fight and determined to prove his point, pressed on. Yes, a pool, and your own rooms, in a better neighborhood with cleaner air for your mom. Stop it, Samuel, Clara said more firmly. Why, it's a real solution, Clara. The girls deserve more than this rundown place. You need a healthier environment. We don't want to move, Lily interjected suddenly, her small but determined voice surprising them. This is Grandma's house. Samuel paused, struck by the reminder. His mother, her house. Of course, the twins would have developed an emotional attachment to this place. Lily, sweetheart, sometimes we have to make changes for our health, he tried to explain gently. Enough, Clara said, standing up with difficulty. Girls, go to your room, please. I need to talk to Samuel. The twins obeyed reluctantly, casting confused glances back at the adults. As soon as they were alone, Clara turned to Samuel, anger barely contained in her stare. How dare you do that? Talk about our future in front of the girls without even consulting me. I was just suggesting, no, you're trying to control, making decisions about our lives as if you have that right. I just want to help, Samuel insisted. No, you want to feel better about yourself, Clara shot back. You want to buy my forgiveness, buy the girls' love. But it doesn't work like that, Samuel. Trust and respect can't be bought. Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. It's not fair to accuse me like this. I've been here for weeks, trying to do the right thing. Doing it all your way, on your terms, without truly listening to what we need. Samuel felt anger welling up. All his patience, all his efforts to approach slowly, to respect Clara's space, and she was accusing him of trying to buy affection. What do you want from me, Clara? He demanded in frustration. Tell me exactly what you want, because I'm trying everything I know. I want you to understand that some things can't be fixed with money, she cried. I want you to see beyond your privilege and understand there's a reason your mother preferred your presence to your money. It was the last straw. Don't talk about my mother, Samuel said, his voice low and dangerous. You know nothing about our relationship. I know she died alone, Clara responded, unrelenting. I know she cried for you every night. I know she refused your money because all she wanted was your time, your love, not your distant charity. Samuel felt something snap inside him. Without thinking, he grabbed his car keys and headed for the door. Where are you going? Clara asked, anger replaced by surprise in her tone. Away. It's what I always do, right? It's what you expect. Samuel, the girls, they'll be fine without me, he cut in. After all, I'm just the guy trying to buy affection, right? And without looking back, he left, slamming the door behind him. The luxury apartment had never seemed so empty. Samuel sat on the Italian leather sofa, an untouched whiskey in front of him, gazing at the city lights through the panoramic window. 3 days had passed since the argument with Clara. 3 days without seeing the twins, without hearing their laughter, without bedtime stories. The void he felt was physical, as if a piece of him had been ripped away. His phone rang. his assistant's 20-second call that day. He ignored it, as he had all the others. The business world, which once occupied every second of his thoughts, now felt distant and irrelevant. "What am I doing?" he murmured, running his hands over his tired face. The question echoed in his mind constantly. Was Clara right? Was it all about relieving his guilt, buying redemption, or was there something deeper driving his actions? He closed his eyes, recalling the simple moments, putting puzzles together with the girls, fixing things around the house, telling stories at night. None of those actions involved money. They were just presence, time, care. Maybe that was the point. Maybe Clara was trying to teach him the same lesson his mother had tried to teach him. That genuine presence was worth more than any sum of money. Samuel got up and walked to the window. His reflection on the glass looked like a stranger, the ruthless businessman who'd built an empire but didn't know how to build real connections. He suddenly remembered Lily saying she didn't want to move because it was her grandmother's house, his mother's house, a place with history, with memories, with emotional meaning no mansion with a pool could replace. "I'm such an idiot," he muttered to himself. The answer had been right in front of him the whole time. Clara didn't just want financial help, though she surely needed it. She wanted respect. She wanted to maintain her dignity and autonomy. She wanted her daughters to learn the value of the things money couldn't buy. Samuel picked up his phone and looked at it for a long moment. Should he call, apologize, or wait a bit longer, let things cool down? No. Time was exactly what Clara didn't have in abundance. With her illness progressing, every day was precious. Yet before pressing the dial button, he paused. He had to do it differently this time. He had to show, not just say, that he understood. He set the phone down on the table and walked into his office. Sitting at his desk, he began to write. Not an email, not a text, but an actual letter on paper. Honest words about regret, understanding, and above all, a promise to respect Clara's choices and decisions. When he finished, he folded the paper carefully and placed it in a plain envelope. Nothing flashy, nothing screaming money or privilege, just his words, sincere and direct. He decided he would deliver it in person the next morning. He wouldn't force his way in, wouldn't insist on a conversation. He would simply leave the letter and let Clara decide if she wanted to give him another chance. Because in the end, he realized that's what this was about. Not his right to be in their lives, but the privilege of being accepted, despite his past mistakes. Samuel looked at the dazzling city beyond the window, feeling a clarity he hadn't experienced in years. To truly be part of Clara and the twins' life, he had to learn to love on their terms, not his. And he was willing to try, no matter how long it took. The morning was grey when Samuel returned to Clara's house. He had chosen to come early, before the girls left for school, hoping to see them. The letter he had written felt heavy in his jacket pocket, reread dozens of times overnight. The neighborhood seemed quieter than usual. No children playing on the sidewalks, no neighbors watering plants, just the occasional breeze rustling the leaves of the trees. Samuel felt an inexplicable chill up his spine as he approached the house. That was when he heard the scream. "Help! Somebody help!" Emma's voice, high-pitched with panic, sliced through the morning air like a knife. Samuel ran, his heart pounding, the letter forgotten in his pocket. The front door was slightly ajar. He pushed it open and raced inside. "Emma! Lily! Sam!" The shout came from the kitchen. Samuel found the twins kneeling beside Clara's motionless body. She lay on the floor, unconscious, a trickle of blood at the corner of her mouth. Her skin had a terrifying grey tint. "She fell," Lily sobbed, her small hands holding Clara's. "We can't get her to wake up." Emma clutched Samuel's arm as he knelt down. She was coughing a lot, really, really hard, and then she fell. We kept calling her, but she won't answer. Samuel's world tilted. Clara, lifeless on the kitchen floor, seemed unreal in her pallor, almost transparent. For a terrible moment, he feared he was too late. With trembling hands, he checked for a pulse, weak, irregular, but present. She was still breathing, though each breath was an audible struggle, a wheezing rasp from her lungs. "Is she gonna die?" Lily's voice was barely a whisper, her eyes wide with terror. "No," he said with a certainty he didn't feel. "I won't let that happen." Moving quickly, Samuel pulled out his phone and called an ambulance. Then he carefully lifted Clara off the floor. She felt alarmingly light in his arms, as if she were already slipping away from this world. "The ambulance will take too long," he said to the girls, who watched him with terrified eyes. "We're taking her in my car." "It'll be faster." The twins followed him as he carried Clara outside. The elderly neighbor, alerted by the noise, appeared on her porch next door. "What happened?" she asked, alarmed. "Clara collapsed. I'm taking her to the hospital," Samuel responded quickly. "Can you stay with the girls?" The woman was already approaching to help when Emma spoke up, her voice surprisingly firm. "No, we're going with her." Samuel hesitated only a second, seeing the determination in the children's eyes. "All right. All of us, then?" The drive to the hospital was a blur of ignored traffic lights and honking horns as he weaved around cars. In the back seat, the twins held Clara's hand, talking to her continuously, as though their voices might keep her anchored to this world. "Mom, we're going to the hospital," Emma said. "Sam's driving really fast. You'd be mad at him, but it's because we need to get there soon." "We did our homework last night," Lily added, her voice shaking with tears. "You have to see, Mom. I got all the multiplication problems right." Samuel watched in the rearview mirror, his heart breaking. Two small figures, bravely trying to be strong, speaking to their unconscious mother as though sheer willpower could bring her back. As he drove, chaotic thoughts flooded his mind. What if she died? What if, like his own mother, Clara left this world without him having a chance to truly fix things? The possibility was unbearable, a dark chasm threatening to swallow him. Then he realized, with a clarity that made him grip the wheel even tighter, that he didn't just want Clara to survive for the girl's sake or out of guilt or duty. There was something deeper, more real, something that had silently grown over the weeks, through difficult arguments and small moments of connection. He cared about Clara, not as a stand-in for his mother, not just as the twins' guardian, but as herself, the strong, proud woman who faced life with dignity, even when everything was against her. "Don't die," he murmured, so quietly the girls couldn't hear. "Please, don't die." The emergency room was a whirlwind of activity. Doctors and nurses rushed to Clara as soon as Samuel carried her inside, quickly placing her on a gurney and wheeling her away. The separation was abrupt. One moment she was in his arms, the next, swinging doors swallowed her up, leaving him standing in the hallway with empty hands and a racing heart. "Where did they take her?" Emma asked, clinging to Samuel's leg. "They're taking care of her," he said, trying to sound calm so she wouldn't be even more scared. "Now we wait." The hospital waiting room was an exercise in tortured patience. Samuel sat with one twin on each side, both eventually falling asleep against him, exhausted by fear and stress. He remained motionless, ignoring his aching muscles, afraid to disturb them from their brief refuge in sleep. 4 hours passed before a doctor finally approached. "Family of Clara Wilson." Samuel gently shifted the twins as he stood. "Here," he said. "How is she?" The doctor, a middle-aged man with deep circles under his eyes, walked closer. "Are you relatives?" Samuel hesitated. What was he to Clara? Not a relative, not exactly a friend. "I'm responsible for her and her daughters," he decided. The doctor studied his face for a moment, then looked at the sleeping twins. Something in his expression softened. "She's stabilized, but the situation is serious. The pulmonary fibrosis has progressed significantly, and there was a lung hemorrhage that caused the collapse. We managed to stop it for now, but she'll need intensive care." "Will she recover?" Samuel asked, his voice nearly failing him. The doctor hesitated, and in that pause, Samuel read more than any verbal response could convey. "We're doing everything we can. The next week will be critical." "Can I see her?" "She's in the ICU. Normally, we don't allow visits unless you're immediate family, but..." He glanced again at the twins. "Given the circumstances, I'll make an exception. A short visit only. She's sedated, but she might hear you." Samuel nodded gratefully, gently waking Emma and Lily to explain in simple terms what the doctor had said. their eyes filled with fear, but also a guarded hope. "Is Mom going to wake up?" Lily asked. "The doctors are doing everything to help her," Samuel answered honestly. "And she's very strong, you know that." They nodded solemnly, like small soldiers preparing for battle. The ICU was an alien environment of constant beeps and a penetrating antiseptic smell. Clara lay in a corner bed, surrounded by monitors, tubes, and wires. A breathing tube was inserted down her throat, her eyes closed, face pale against the white sheets. The twins froze at the entrance, momentarily paralyzed by the sight. "It's okay," Samuel murmured, holding their hands. "These machines are helping her breathe while she rests." They approached slowly. Clara seemed smaller somehow, more fragile than Samuel had ever seen her. The proud, determined woman who faced the world with her chin held high now battled for each breath, reliant on machines to survive. Emma was the first to get close enough to touch Clara's hand. "Mom," she called softly. "We're here. Me, Lily, and Sam." Lily joined her sister, their small hands holding Clara's as though trying to anchor her to this world. "You have to get better soon," she said, with a seriousness that broke Samuel's heart. "We promise not to cry, but it's hard." Samuel stood slightly behind them, giving the girls a moment with their mother. He watched the scene with a lump in his throat, unable to shake the familiarity of this terrible scenario, his own mother in a hospital bed. Only he hadn't been there to hold her hand, to tell her he loved her one last time. A nurse approached gently. "We need to let her rest now," she said. "You can come back tomorrow." The twins reluctantly backed away from their mother, but Samuel asked, "Just one more moment, please." The nurse nodded sympathetically and guided the girls out of the room. Alone with Clara, Samuel finally approached the bed. His legs felt like lead, each step requiring conscious effort. He sat on the edge of the bed and, after a moment of hesitation, took her hand in his. "Clara," he began, his voice a hoarse whisper. "I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm here. We're all here." The steady beep of the monitors was his only response. "I'm sorry about what happened, about the argument, about leaving like that." The words came with difficulty, his throat tight with emotion. "You were right, you know, about everything, about me, about money, not fixing certain things." Samuel gently squeezed Clara's hand, as though trying to transfer his strength to her through that touch. "I don't want to lose you again," he continued, his voice trembling. "I promise I won't leave this time. No matter what happens, no matter how hard it gets, this time I'm staying." A tear slipped down his cheek. Samuel didn't try to hide it. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to fully feel without reservation, without walls. Fear, guilt, fragile hope, all of it coursed through him now. "The girls need you," he whispered, "and I need you too. So please fight. Come back to us." Through tear-blurred vision, Samuel thought he saw the slightest movement in Clara's fingers, perhaps just a reflex, or perhaps, on some deep, inexplicable level, she heard him. Miyatiya's couple of days turned into a week, then 2. Samuel's life narrowed to 3 places: the hospital, where he spent most of his time, Clara's house, where he cared for the twins, and his car, where he sometimes slept when he was too exhausted to drive. His assistant handled the most urgent company matters remotely, but for the first time since founding his empire, business came second. His priority was now clear: Clara and the twins. On the 10th day, Clara opened her eyes, only for a few seconds before drifting off again, but it was enough to ignite hope. On the 12th day, doctors removed the breathing tube, satisfied with her improved oxygen levels. On the 14th day, she was conscious enough to recognize her daughters. "My little ones," she murmured, her voice rough and weak from disuse. The girls cried at the sound of her voice, hugging her gently, afraid of hurting her. Samuel kept a slight distance during those moments, letting Clara have private time with her daughters. But their eyes occasionally met, and there was something new in Clara's gaze. Not forgiveness, not yet, but an openness, a willingness to consider possibilities that hadn't been there before. It was during the 3rd week of her hospitalization that Clara finally spoke directly to him, while the girls were at school. "I heard you," she said suddenly, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Samuel looked at her, confused. "When?" "That first day in the ICU when you said you wouldn't leave." Her eyes, still tired but clearer now, fixed on his. "I thought I was dreaming, but it was real, wasn't it?" Samuel nodded, speechless for a moment. "Every word," he managed to say at last. Clara studied him for a long time, as if searching for something in his eyes. "You've changed," she finally declared. "I've tried," he admitted. "I'm still trying." A small smile curved Clara's lips. "I noticed." That simple acknowledgement meant more to Samuel than any award he'd ever received, more than magazine covers, more than numbers in a bank account. "The doctors say I can go home in a few days," Clara continued, "but I'll need constant care, oxygen, medication, rest." "I'll help with all of it," Samuel offered immediately. "I can hire nurses," he caught himself, mindful of the delicate ground. "I mean, we can figure out the best way together. Whatever you prefer." Clara smiled again, more openly this time. "You're learning." "From the best teacher," he replied, smiling back. The house was quiet when Samuel arrived that night. The twins were sleeping at the neighbors, giving him time to arrange some things before Clara came home the next day. He started in her room, changing the sheets, airing out the space, making room for the oxygen equipment set to be delivered in the morning. As he organized the bedside table, a partially hidden envelope caught his attention. Normally, he would have respected Clara's privacy, but something about the official hospital paper made him pause. It was a letter from weeks before her hospitalization. Hesitantly, Samuel opened the envelope. It was a detailed medical report on Clara's condition. Words leaped off the page like accusations: accelerated progression, severely compromised lung function, candidate for transplant. Clara knew, she had known for weeks how serious her condition was, but chose to hide it from everyone, including him. With a knot in his stomach, Samuel began opening the dresser drawers, looking for more information. In a folder carefully tucked under piles of clothes, he found more medical reports, each painting a darker picture than her current doctor had described. Then, in another drawer, he found the bills, stacks of them, unpaid medical expenses, collection notices, overdue warnings, some dating back years. At the bottom of the stack, a particularly alarming document, a foreclosure notice. The house, his mother's house, was on the verge of being taken by the bank. Samuel sat on the edge of the bed, hands trembling as he held the papers. Clara owed tens of thousands of dollars. Money she clearly didn't have, money she might never be able to pay, especially now with her condition. How much pride and fear did it take to hide all this? To smile at her daughters every day, knowing her world was collapsing beneath her feet? To refuse help, even when her own life was at stake? His first instinct was to grab his phone, call his accountant, and order every debt paid immediately. It was the logical, practical solution. With a single phone call, he could erase this entire problem from Clara's life. But then he remembered her face when he offered money before, how her eyes had hardened, how hurt and anger replaced any possible gratitude. Clara didn't want charity. She didn't want to be saved like a charity project, yet the situation was unsustainable. Without intervention, Clara would lose the house. Without proper treatment, her condition would worsen further. The twins could end up orphaned and homeless. Samuel put the papers back as he found them. He needed to think. He needed a way to help Clara without undermining her, to solve practical problems without destroying the fragile trust they were rebuilding. He sat in the darkened living room for hours, pondering his options. The house around him seemed to hold echoes of the twins' laughter, the bedtime stories, the small daily triumphs Clara celebrated with such pride. It was more than a roof and walls. This was a home. The home his mother had built, the one Clara preserved, the one now filled with his own memories as well. When the first rays of sunlight came through the window, Samuel had a plan. It wasn't perfect, and it carried significant emotional risks, but it offered a path that honored Clara's dignity while addressing the urgent, practical needs. He stood, grabbed his coat, and left. There was much to do before he picked Clara up from the hospital. A meeting with a lawyer, a visit to the bank, some strategic phone calls. He glanced at the house one last time as he got into his car. "I'll fix this," he promised quietly. "The right way, this time." For the first time since this entire journey began, he felt certain he actually knew what that meant. Clara looked at Samuel with suspicion, then at the papers spread across the kitchen table. 2 months had passed since her hospitalization, and though she was still weak, she could sit up for discussions like this. "Why are you showing me all this?" she finally asked. Samuel took a deep breath. This was the conversation he'd been rehearsing for weeks, waiting for the time when Clara was strong enough to face it. "Because we need to solve this together," he said. "I don't want to make decisions about your life without you, but I also can't pretend I haven't seen these papers, or that I don't understand how serious things are." Clara ran her hand through her hair, which was starting to show premature grey strands. The oxygen hissed softly from the tube running to her nose, a constant presence now. "How much do you know?" she asked. "I know about the mortgage, about the old medical debts, and about the doctor's prognosis." Clara closed her eyes briefly, the weight of life visible in every line of her face. The twins were at school, giving them a rare moment to speak openly. "I never intended to drag you into this," she said finally. "I know. And I respect that," Samuel said, choosing his words carefully. "But I'm involved now, Clara. I'm here, and I have resources that can help." She opened her mouth, likely to refuse outright, but Samuel raised a hand. "Before you say no, I have a proposal. It's not charity, it's a partnership." Clara raised an eyebrow, intrigued despite her reluctance. Samuel pulled a folder from his briefcase. "I've done some research. The house has a decent market value, even with the repairs needed. I propose buying a share of it. An investment, legally speaking." "Buying a share of my house?" Clara repeated, skeptical. "Our house," Samuel corrected gently. "My mother's house, too. Where I grew up. Where your daughters are growing up now." Something in Clara's gaze flickered. Samuel continued, sensing a small opening. "The money would clear the mortgage and the most urgent medical debts. You'd retain majority ownership. I'd technically be your tenant, paying a portion of expenses while I'm here." "How long do you plan to stay?" Clara asked, her voice softer now. Samuel looked directly into her eyes. "As long as it takes, as long as I'm welcome." A silence settled between them. Clara studied the papers carefully, clearly processing the implications. "It's a practical solution," Samuel added, "but only if you fully agree. The money would go into an account in your name. You decide how and when to use it." "Why are you making it so complicated?" Clara asked. "It would be easier just to pay everything." "Because I respect your independence," Samuel replied honestly. "Because I've learned that money without dignity is worthless." Clara exhaled, a weary sound carrying the weight of years of struggle. "I need to think." "Of course," Samuel agreed, gathering the papers. "There's no rush, but—" He hesitated. "There's another matter we can't delay much longer." "My treatment?" Clara guessed. Samuel nodded. "I spoke with some specialists. There's a new protocol for pulmonary fibrosis being tested at the Mayo Clinic. They're accepting patients for the study. I imagine it's expensive." "It's covered by the study," Samuel explained. "But it would require you to spend a few weeks there initially, and then make regular visits." Clara glanced out the window at the yard where the twins played on weekends. "And the girls? They can stay here with me, or go with you, if you prefer." "I have flexibility to work remotely now." She looked surprised. "And your company?" Samuel gave a slight smile. "I've learned the world doesn't end if I'm not there 24 hours a day. I have good executives and new priorities." Clara studied him for a long moment, as if trying to peer beyond the surface to gauge his sincerity. Finally, she nodded. "I'll consider the treatment," she said. "About the house, and I need a few days." Samuel stood, respecting her space. "Take all the time you need. I'll be here." A week later, Clara called Samuel into the living room. The twins were in the backyard, visible through the window, working on a complicated jigsaw puzzle at the picnic table Samuel had built the previous month. "I accept your proposal," Clara said bluntly. "About the house, and about the treatment." Samuel felt immense relief course through him. "Thank you for trusting me." It's not just about me, Clara clarified, looking at her daughters through the window. It's about them. They deserve a healthy mother and a stable home. They deserve the world, Samuel agreed softly. Over the next few days, everything moved with surprising efficiency. The lawyers finalized the co-ownership paperwork. The mortgage was paid off. The medical debts were renegotiated and settled. The house, so long overshadowed by impending loss, was safe. For the twins, daily life didn't change much in appearance. Samuel was already around most of the time, helping with homework, telling bedtime stories, fixing broken things. The only real difference was the easing of tension in the air, as though the whole house could finally breathe again. Clara, however, did seem different. There was a lightness in her shoulders, even with the constant oxygen and fatigue. Freeing herself from debt allowed her to focus on what truly mattered, regaining her health and caring for her daughters. The Mayo Clinic treatment was scheduled for the following month. Samuel had taken care of everything, from travel to lodging. But what impressed Clara most was how he included her in each decision, from choosing the apartment near the clinic to planning how the girls would keep in touch with her during the separation. Meanwhile, Samuel quietly worked on another project. Careful not to offend Clara's pride, he looked into ways she could earn income without heavy physical labor. "I never asked what you did before you got sick," he mentioned one night while they were having dinner after the girls had gone to bed. Clara smiled lightly. "Besides cleaning houses, I used to sew, mostly small repairs, but I also made dresses for the girls. I've always been handy." Samuel nodded, storing that information. "You're talented. I saw the costumes you made for their school play. That was my dream, you know, to have a small shop, maybe. Nothing fancy," Clara confessed, a rare moment of vulnerability. But life had other plans. Days later, while Clara rested, Samuel showed her a tablet with a simple website open. "What do you think of this?" Clara took the device, curious. It was an online shop, simple yet elegant, named Clara's Creations at the top. Empty for now, but with spaces for product photos and descriptions. "What is this?" she asked, puzzled. "An idea," Samuel replied. "If you want, a place to sell anything you create, whenever you feel well enough. No pressure, no tight deadlines, at your own pace." Clara looked from the tablet to Samuel, emotion filling her face. "You did this for me." He nodded. "It's just a start. We can change it however you like. Or scrap it entirely out if it's not what you want." Clara was quiet for a long moment, her fingers lightly tracing the screen. "Thank you," she finally said, "for thinking of this, for seeing me." "It's the least I can do," Samuel said with a smile. But Clara shook her head, growing serious. "No, it's not. It's far more than most people would do." She paused, then continued. "It reminds me of your mother, actually." Samuel felt his heart clench. "How so?" Clara set the tablet aside, looking off into the distance as if she could see the past. "Maria had this ability, to see potential in people, even when they couldn't see it themselves." A comfortable silence settled, each of them lost in memories. Then Clara spoke again, her voice soft but firm. "There's something you should know, about your mother, about you, about how it all began." Samuel straightened, intrigued. Clara rarely spoke about the past, especially about his mother. "When you were about 8, the school identified that you were exceptionally bright," Clara began. "They recommended a special program, an expensive private school for gifted children." Samuel frowned, confused. "I never knew that." "She didn't want you to know. She didn't want you feeling like a burden. She told me your brain was a gift that couldn't be wasted in schools that wouldn't challenge you." Clara paused, breathing a bit heavily. "Maria took out a mortgage on the house. She got 2 extra jobs. She sold almost everything of value she had, all to pay for that school." The revelation washed over Samuel like a wave. Memory fragments began clicking into place. His mother always tired, yet insisting he focus on his studies. The different uniform he wore, while other neighborhood kids went to public school. The long bus rides they took every morning. "Why?" His voice faltered. "Why didn't she tell me? Pride, maybe. Or fear you'd feel guilty. She used to say your mind was a gift that needed the best education possible." Samuel felt tears forming. "The debts you found when she passed," Clara nodded. Part of it, yes. She never fully recovered from that investment. But she always said it was worth every cent. Your success was her biggest pride. Even after I left, Samuel asked, shame weighing on his voice. Especially after, Clara said gently. She cut out every article about you. She had a box full of them. She showed them to everyone in the neighborhood. My son, the business genius, she'd say. Samuel couldn't hold back his tears any longer. His entire empire, all his success, built on the silent sacrifice of a woman he had abandoned, a debt he could never fully repay. I didn't know, he whispered. I never imagined. Clara reached out, gently touching his hand. She didn't want your gratitude, Samuel. She wanted your love, your presence. Realization crashed into him like a tidal wave. His mother hadn't needed his money, she needed him. Just as Clara didn't want his charity, she wanted his respect, his partnership, his genuine presence. I'm trying to do things differently now, he said finally, wiping his tears. Trying to be the man she raised me to be. She'd be proud, Clara replied. I am too. Those three simple words caused something to break inside Samuel, not in pain, but relief. A floodgate of emotions held back for years. Thank you, he managed, his voice husky. For telling me. For giving me another chance? Clara smiled, and for the first time, the smile reached her eyes. That's what family is about, isn't it? Second chances. 3 months later, Clara returned from her initial treatment at the Mayo Clinic. The results were promising. No cure, but a significant stabilization of her condition. She still required oxygen, still tired easily, but she could move around the house without much trouble and even spend short periods in the yard with the twins. The house had changed in her absence. Nothing drastic. Samuel knew far too well how much sentiment was tied to the place to renovate without her input. But small fixes here and there. The roof no longer leaked. The windows opened easily. The kitchen faucet finally stopped dripping. Most importantly, there was a small office set up in the guest room, complete with a modern sewing machine and space for Clara to work on her creations whenever she felt up to it. Her online store already had a few products, mainly decorative masks she'd sewn during her occupational therapy at the clinic. The twins had flourished too. Emma remained bubbly and creative, yet now displayed a surprising discipline at school. Lily, always more serious, started to open up more, laughing more often. Samuel had hired a tutor who came twice a week for extra educational activities. Nothing lavish, just enough to nurture their evident potential. As for Samuel, his transformation was the most striking of all. The ruthless executive in impeccable suits was gone, replaced by a man who wore jeans daily, who knew the neighbors' names, who knew each girl's favorite ice cream flavor. He still ran his company, but with a new perspective, that of someone who learned true success wasn't measured in zeros on a balance sheet. On Clara's first evening home, Samuel prepared a special dinner. Nothing extravagant, he'd learned his lesson about excess. Just a home-cooked meal made with care and attention. Roasted chicken, the girl's favorite. Fresh vegetables from the local market. An apple pie for dessert, following a recipe he'd found in an old notebook of his mother's. When everyone sat at the table, Emma suddenly said, "I like it when we're all together like this, like a real family." A brief silence followed her words. Samuel glanced at Clara, unsure what to say, but she was smiling, a calm, genuine smile. "That's what we are, right?" Clara finally said, looking directly at Samuel. "A family." "Is Sam our big brother now?" Lily asked, with the disarming innocence only children possess. Samuel felt a lump in his throat. "Well, technically I'm a bit too old to be a brother," he began, trying to find the right words. "He's family," Clara interjected gently. "The exact label isn't so important, is it?" The girls seemed satisfied with that answer. Emma immediately launched into an elaborate recounting of her day at school, while Lily listened closely, occasionally correcting her sister's exaggerations. Over the girls' heads, Samuel's and Clara's eyes met. A mutual understanding passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of the journey they'd traversed, from open wounds to gradual healing, from mistrust to trust, from loneliness to connection. Later, after the girls went to bed, Samuel and Clara sat on the porch, gazing at the stars. The silence between them was comfortable now, free from the tension that once defined their relationship. "You know what impresses me most about you?" Clara asked suddenly. "What?" "How you've truly changed, not just your outward actions, but on the inside." She regarded him thoughtfully. "Very few people manage that, actually changing." Samuel pondered her words. "I guess I just needed to find something worth more than everything I was chasing before. And you found it." He looked at the house, the soft lights in the windows, the twins' bikes leaning against the wall, at Clara, sitting beside him with oxygen softly hissing and eyes full of hard-earned wisdom. "I did," he answered simply. Through the kitchen window, the place that once belonged only to Clara and the twins now had a fourth seat at the table, a permanent spot, a real sense of belonging, a redemption that came not through money or power, but through the simplest and most profound of achievements, learning to love and be loved in return. And for a man who had long measured his worth in billions, that realization was the truest treasure, one no bank balance could ever quantify.